At dawn on the 29th of April 1993, officials from Peru's banking regulator, the SBS, walked into an office building on Avenida Arequipa in the Lima district of Lecca. It was the flagship of the Latin American Center for Business Advisory, a company everyone knew simply by its acronym, CLE. For 15 years, it had promised ordinary Peruvians something their own banks could not. An interest of up to 13% a month. Something no one could resist. Inside the office, the auditors did not find a bank. They found cash, mountains of it, in drawers and back rooms, roughly $36 million in physical currency, sitting idle. And in one corner, a detail that tells the entire story in a single image, $170,000 in banknotes, left so long they had begun to rot. Yes, physically decompose. Money that was never invested, never at work, never anywhere, just aging in the dark. The superintendent, Luis Cortavarria Checkley, announced that this intervention was done as a precaution, but it was in fact the end. The largest financial fraud in Peruvian history had just stopped moving. Behind that rotting cash stood the people who had handed it over. Retirees, soldiers, homemakers. By most counts, around 250,000 of them. But 15 years earlier, nobody had heard of Carlos Manrique. He was a secondary school mathematics teacher about to do the arithmetic on an entire country. Carlos Remo Manrique Carreño was born in 1936 in Cusco, high in the Peruvian Andes. He trained as a teacher and spent years in front of a chalkboard, teaching secondary school mathematics. A man, in other words, who was comfortable with numbers. In the mid-1970s, he opened a modest business advisory office in Lima. On paper, that is all Clay ever was. A consultancy, not a bank. That distinction would matter enormously because a consultancy answered to no banking regulator. By 1978, the consultancy had begun doing something consultancies do not do. It started taking deposits from the public. The offer was extraordinary. Hand Clay your savings, and it would pay you interest of up to 13% a month, up to 100% a year. And at first it paid. Punctually. Every month, on documented promissory notes, the interest arrived exactly as promised. A depositor would tell a neighbor, the neighbor would tell a cousin, and the cousin would bring his pension. They called themselves Clayistas. Where did the returns come from? Clay said they came from its empire, a sprawling network of some 89 affiliated companies, supposedly generating the profits that funded the payments. In reality, those businesses generated almost nothing. The interest paid to old depositors came from the deposits of new ones. It was a Ponzi scheme, in its most textbook form. The math teacher's real equation was very simple. Money in the front door, money out the front door, and nothing in between. Two things made it work in Peru in a way it might not have elsewhere. The first was the economy. Through the late 1980s, under Alan Garcia's first government, Peru suffered catastrophic hyperinflation. The national currency, the INTI, was collapsing, losing more than 40% of its value in a single year. Against that backdrop, a promise of 100% a year did not sound like greed. It sounded like survival. It sounded like barely keeping up. The second was the law, or the absence of it. Until 1991, Peru had no legal framework to supervise informal financial entities at all. Clay was not hiding from a regulator. For most of its life, no regulator had the authority to look, and so Clay became not just a company, but a phenomenon. It handed out scholarships, it raffled cars and apartments, it ran a members club with a pool, organized mountain excursions, and announced, though never launched, its own airline. Manrique was named Businessman of the Year, twice. A magazine crowned him its Person of the Year. He appeared on hit television programs. A political party offered him a run at the presidency. Peru's own First Lady, Susana Higuchi, was quoted at the time as saying that if there were 4 Carlos Manriques, Peru would have no foreign debt. He was, by every measure the public could see, a national success. The one measure the public could not see was his balance sheet. Here is where we stop and ask the question this channel always asks. Would you have caught it? Start with the return itself, 13% a month. To us today, that number screams, but hold it up against the world Clay's depositors actually lived in. When the currency in your own wallet is losing 40% of its value every year, your instinct for what counts as an impossible return has nothing stable left to measure against. A rational baseline requires a rational currency. Peru did not have one. 13% a month was not judged against sound money. It was judged against money that was already behaving just as illogically. The fraud did not have to look plausible. It only had to look no crazier than the INTI already did. That is the deepest trap in this entire case, and almost nobody escaped it. Once you see that, the smaller flags come into focus. Clay paid like clockwork. That was the whole engine of trust. But paying on time is the one thing a Ponzi is structurally best at, right up until the moment it isn't. Reliable payment is not evidence of solvency. It is the product a Ponzi sells. A real business might miss a payment because its money is tied up in real assets. A Ponzi never misses, because the money isn't invested at all. It's just passing through. Then there were the awards. Businessman of the Year, Person of the Year, the television slots, the praise from a First Lady. But awards are won by visibility, not by solvency. You cannot earn a balance sheet on television. The more decorated Manrique became, the fewer questions anyone asked. The medals did the reassuring that an audit should have done. And there were the 89 companies. It sounded impressive, but a network of companies is a description, not a cash flow. When the regulator finally asked Manrique exactly what those businesses did with the money, he, a mathematics teacher, could not explain it. And if no one can name the single business that produces the yield, then the yield is coming from the line of depositors standing behind you. One question would have exposed all of it in advance. Where right now is my money actually held? At Clay, the honest answer was, in a drawer. We know that because some of it was still there in 1993, quietly rotting. Would you have caught it? Tell me in the comments where your line would have been. For years, no one with authority could touch Clay. Then in 1991, that changed. Peru passed a law. For the first time, informal financial entities could be supervised, and the SBS, the banking regulator, finally had jurisdiction. It began to look at Clay. It asked simple questions. Show us the investments. Show us the accounting. Show us where the returns come from. Clay couldn't. There were no reliable books. There was no portfolio of profitable companies. One SBS official put it plainly, Manrique could not explain what he had done with the money and had no reliable documentation to show for it. The empire of 89 companies, examined up close, produced no profits anyone could find. Meanwhile, the machine was starving. A Ponzi lives only as long as new deposits outrun old obligations. As the inflows slowed, Clay could no longer cover the interest it had promised. The math was turning against the math teacher. On the 29th of April 1993, the SBS intervened. Officials entered the Avenida Arequipa offices at dawn. They found the $36 million in cash. They found the $170,000 rotting in the corner. And they found no sign of the fortune that 250,000 people had been told was working on their behalf. Manrique did not wait for the courts. He fled the country. He became the most wanted Peruvian on Interpol's lists, a fugitive with a face the whole country recognized. It took a year and a half. In November 1994, in the Brickell district of Miami, agents arrested him, reportedly as he was leaving a bank. In 1995, he was extradited back to Peru. A court convicted him of fraud and of illegally taking deposits from the public, and sentenced him to 8 years. By then, Clay itself was already gone. In 1994, while Manrique was still a fugitive, Peru's Supreme Court had ordered the company dissolved, which left the only question that would outlive everyone involved. Where had the money gone? At its peak, Clay had been taking in around $200 million a year. Liquidators would later estimate that the total owed to depositors exceeded $600 million, though, as even his obituaries would note, no documents ever fully confirmed that figure. Against those hundreds of millions in promises, the state had recovered about 36 million in cash. The rest was never there. Manrique served his sentence and was released in 2001. It was not the end of his career in the courts. He was imprisoned again on further fraud matters in 2008 and again in 2011. For the Clayistas, there was no comparable second act. Restitution was almost theoretical. By 1998, only about 5% of victims had recovered anything at all. In 2017, a full generation later, a liquidation drive paid out a maximum of 500 sols, roughly $135 to some 32,000 former depositors. Against a lifetime of savings, it was a rounding error, and it still isn't over. As of 2024, more than 30 years after the offices were sealed, Clay remained in liquidation, still cataloging properties in Lima to auction off, still trying to return a few more cents on the dollar to people who, in many cases, are no longer alive to receive them. One former member of the liquidation board estimated that at its height, Clay had controlled as much as 40% of the country's financial system liquidity, a striking figure from a single man, never audited, but some measure of how large the whole was. Carlos Manrique never accepted any of it. To the end of his life, he denied that Clay had been a fraud at all. He died in Lima in July 2024, at the age of 88, still insisting the money had been real. Peru had a name for him, coined by a comedian after the collapse, Cheverengue. It became the country's shorthand for the man who did the arithmetic on everyone else. A mathematics teacher spent 15 years teaching 250,000 people the same lesson, that a number arriving on time is not the same as a number that exists, and that when the currency itself has gone illogical, no interest rate sounds unreasonable. This has been Sin Fondos. The funds were never there. If cases like this one are why you're here, subscribe. There is always another set of books,